You're listening to the Wartime Leadership Podcast with your host, Nathan Coy. This month, More Than a Mastermind May.
I'm your host, Nathan Coy, and today's episode is a continuation of the More Than a Mastermind May, where I'm talking with individuals that I get to meet with every single Thursday. Every single Thursday we have a More Than a Mastermind where we go over a different John Maxwell book or something. And these individuals, I'm telling you right now, they are absolutely amazing. These are people of integrity. They're from literally all different walks of life. I'm the dumb one of the group. Like, I have no idea what these people are talking about half the time, but I try to figure it out because it's more about Web3, NFTs, music and NFTs. It blows my mind. I have the ability to sit down and talk with these people on a weekly basis. And one of those people is Jere B from the EntreMusician. Jere, how are you, my brother?
Man, I'm doing absolutely excellent, and I have to just disagree with you. Right off the bat, I am the weak link in the mastermind, so there you have it, okay?
No, because it's more than a mastermind. I am the one that half the time is sitting there looking at the deal going, why did I get invited to this? Like, how did these people think I was good enough to be here?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I got to give a shout out to Brandon David, who invited me. As you have described him before, he is the connector of connectors, and that was my whole thing. How did I get invited to this? Like, I'm not worthy. Remember Wayne's World? I'm not worthy. Oh, yeah. I'm not worthy.
Not worthy, man.
That's how I feel.
Hey, but you know what, Jere? It's an absolute honor because since you and I have been hosting on that and taking the opportunity to host, co-host, and have had some really good conversations,
absolutely.
I knew that it was going to drive us here. In fact, we've already been talking, folks, for 30 minutes. I just didn't hit record yet because every time we get on, we just start this investment into one another, and it's natural going from that group to this and to just roll over. But, Jere, before we get going too deep into this, I need to ask you some questions, okay?
Sure.
These are easy. They're warm-up questions. It's from the random question generator. Uh-huh. I did not come up with these. I just pushed the button.
You got it.
All right. What is the stupidest thing you've ever spent money on?
True answer is dope.
Is what?
DOPE. Dope.
Oh. Okay, see, folks, they say you learn something new every day. Did not know that one.
Oh, yeah. That's got to be the stupidest as I review my life, in things that I've done that were absolutely idiotic. That was it.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't expect that.
Wow. No, I did not, Jere. Because I know a little bit about you, and that was
threw
me
before Christ,
off.
Man. That was before the Lord Jesus. Thankfully, but you didn't give me any time period.
Touche. All right, Jere B, what is your drink of choice?
Coffee.
Yeah. Oh, the nectar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually saw both you and I got our coffee mugs, and
yeah.
I know what's in there.
And you know what? Lori and I start to have afternoon coffee now, and it's amazing. It's not just a morning drink. We'll have some conversation in the afternoon and put on a cup of coffee. And yeah.
Wow. Those wonderful conversations just between you and the wife?
You know what? I've been married 27 years to this woman, 28 years in April, and it's the second best decision that I've ever made. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I'm so in love with my wife, and we are breaking our brains together, getting closer to each other, getting closer to the Lord. We are empty nesters. Our 3 daughters are all, out of the home. And for the first 3 months, that was kind of weird, being there together and learning each other, because there's some conversations that you kind of hide behind the children as you're raising them. But once we got all that scattered out and out of the way, we just fell in love with each other all over again, and it's been great.
So what was that like? Like, what did you do to rekindle once they were gone?
Well, first of all, we had to have the real conversations. Like, what did you mean by that? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean, right? And so we, that there's something I think that we've always treasured. And in year number 7 and in year number 17, our communication got kind of funny. In fact, in year 17, we had to meet with a counselor because our communication just wasn't on point. So what she recommended we do is to write letters to each other. So we began communicating by writing letters because there's no interruptions. There's no, you just receive what you've been given and respond to it. And so we got over that track. So when the girls left and began their own lives, it was that same thing. The first 3 months of trying to get that open communication established. And here's what you said, but here's what I meant when I said it. And once we went through that, then it was just like it was off to the races. And I know that the Lord put us together. I got a funny story for you if you
hey, go with it. It's your episode, brother.
Oh, thank you. But this is true, and it may test your theology a little bit, okay? Because remember, I said the stupidest thing that I ever spent money on was dope. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing dope, cocaine and marijuana were my drugs of choice, right? So here I'm in 1992-ish, 91, 92. And I'm sitting on my aunt's stoop and I'm inebriated. Like I'm right in front of her house and she has this stoop. And so here this car comes down the street with a gentleman that I knew. Just to give you some geography, my aunt stayed on this side of the street. My grandmother stayed on the other side of the street. And this guy that I knew stayed next door to my grandmother. And this lady is in the car with him who I knew of. But here I am inebriated. And so she's a passenger in the car. And I get upset. I'm angry. Why? I don't know. Angry. So angry that I get up off the stoop and I stumble across the street. And by this time, they had parked and gone into his house. And I go and I bang on this brother's house. And so he opens the door and I'm like, hey, man. I said, is that Lori Pugh in there? And he's like, yeah. Like, what is it to you? And I said, I know her, man. I know her. And so he slams the door in my face. Obviously, I'm this drunken wreck. And I stumble back across the street wondering, what the heck? What was that all about? I don't know why. So the Lord saves me, delivers me out of all the junk that I was in. I go and join this particular church. This lady, Lori, is in this church. I ask her out in June. So I come in January. I ask her out because I've been going to Bible studies. I'm getting discipled. I ask her out in June. We get married the following April. And three weeks after we come back from the honeymoon, I'm saying like, hey, didn't you used to date so-and-so, this guy's name? And she's like, yeah. Can you imagine that Holy Spirit, even though I was inebriated, was on my shoulder like, hey, what do you think about that? This he's driving your wife around, basically. What does that do to your theology? Doesn't that mess with it a little bit?
No, it just solidifies a lot of stuff. And here's why I say that, because I did a lot of stupid stuff. I did a lot of stupid stuff even in the early portion of my military career. Like I did a lot of stuff that probably should have gotten me kicked out. And at 20, I came in at 24. At age 26, they saw fit to send me to Guam. And I'm sitting here going, I'm not married. I'm wanting to get married. I want to find somebody. Why are you sending me to Guam, God? Like, what is the point of this? Little did I know. I'm like, it's a small island. It's 20 miles by 8 miles. It's tiny. Well, little did I know that God would send me on a work trip to Saipan, which is half the size of Guam, so even smaller, to meet my wife and to get married eventually a year later. Now, I could have done without all the bumps, the bruises, the stuff I was doing to my body. I could have done with all of that if I had the same outcome. If I had the same outcome, I would go through it again. Now, if God had seen fit to let me go through and get married to her without all of that, I would have accepted that wholeheartedly, but because I went through it, I would go through it again for the same outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
I understand that. I understand that completely. I feel the same way. It's it's been 4 different threads of my life that has these trajectories has led me to the intersection that Christ has been the only way. He's the only answer. And before the foundation of the world, he, in his mercy, considered me and considered where he wanted me. And it's wild. It's like, well, why did I go through that? Why did this happen? And what was that dark time about? And he's going, I got you.
Yeah, even at your worst, even at our worst,
Yes.
God's at his best. You know, he can take somebody who's a drunken fool, walk him across the street to say hello, and to realize that that's going to be your wife in the future.
It's amazing.
Look what I have prepared for you.
It's amazing.
Come on.
And now we have afternoon coffee together, so there you go.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. Just the power of forgiveness and grace and mercy and all of those things built up. But hey, we're getting ahead of ourselves. If you had to describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be? Oh, I know.
Oh boy, crazy. I'm a learner, and music is just a thread that I didn't ask for, and it's just been reverberating through my life as long as I can remember.
Oh, and I can't wait to get into that. I mean, EntreMusician, folks, listen, you all are going to be blessed because this is opening up so many opportunities for so many people that thought it was over, and they still got something left in the tank. And I don't want to give away too much, but yeah. Hey, what's the greatest trick that has ever been played on you?
Wow, that's random, man. I
said it's a random question generator. I mean, it's literally random.
Random. Yeah. I don't know. My sister Roz has played some interesting tricks on me, but I guess she used to trick me into doing her chores. She would say, "Mom wanted you to do this," and Mom never said that. I guess that's it.
Okay. No, that counts. Oh, it counts.
Yeah, that's about it.
All right. I think that we are warmed up enough, folks. You all are already getting an idea of what Thursday nights look like for us. So, hey, Jerry, thank you for being on the show today. I've wanted this conversation for a while, and I threw it out there last Friday. I was like, hey, Jerry, what are you doing Monday?
Monday, right.
Early Monday. Just, what are you doing? He was like, I've got a lot, but I'll give you time.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jerry, why don't you take us in your background? Kind of walk us through. You can go back as early as you want. You can bring us up to the current. Just take us through your background. Give us a little bit of the overview of who Jere B is.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said before, there's kind of these 4 trajectories. Music, obviously, my search for Christ, even when I didn't know I was looking for him. Finding my beautiful wife, as I told a little bit about that, and just searching for myself. So I guess I'll go the searching for myself route because, I'm born and raised Youngstown, Ohio, and I come from a broken home, broken family. My mother and father did not stay married. They were married, had me and my sister. And then my mom remarried about 7 years after that. I had another sister. So I'm named after my father. And my father was not really involved in my life. Yet I'm named after him. I look just like him. His parents, in many ways overcompensated for their son's absence in my life. So I love my grandparents to the hilt, my aunts and cousins and whatnot, and having a relationship with my stepfather, which was very rocky almost from the start. It's amazing when you get to be my age. I will be 58 in just a few days here, and you look back on the decisions that you have made, and how they affect your children and how they could possibly affect your grandchildren, which I'm not a grandfather, but I'm just saying, when you look in the rearview mirror of your life. So I'm going from this little young boy who's trying to discover himself, in the sense that my grandfathers on my paternal and maternal side are just absolutely the best. But my father is not there, and this man who has married my mother, who is not my father, is really not there emotionally. And so trying to navigate what that looks like, and having a sanctuary in music, really begins to mold you, not necessarily in the best of ways, but just, in a sense of belonging. And then, if I can bring in this trajectory of being taken to church and knowing a little bit about church or religion or traditions that really don't find root in you. Like, I'm one of these soils that really the root doesn't come down on. And it's been a search of identity that, until you, wow, this is really crazy, because I'm trying to be concise, brother. I'm trying to be concise, but to really come to a place at 28 years old where I find him, and I find life, and I find myself. Wow. I wish I could have said that. If I could rewind that, I probably would have said it a lot better, but you're hitting me right with all of these four roads in me trying to find who Jerry is. I think right now at 57, about to be 58, that I'm just starting to have a clue as to who this guy is. And so I think that's been the real thread. So let me take another minute and begin to impart. So I've learned forgiveness because I've come to a place where my father, who is still with us, my mother left and went to heaven in 2008, but my father's still with us, where I'm building relationship because of forgiveness, because of all of this rebellion and all of this unforgiveness and all of this stuff that kind of gets in you because, well, you were not there for me, you didn't do this, boom, 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 and finding a way to build a bridge. Now, my stepfather is no longer with us as well, but learning that you can forgive someone even after they've passed on is a gift that God gives in forgiveness. So I've been able to forgive my stepfather as well, and build a bridge, at least emotionally in my heart, that I no longer harbor what I had held over him for so long. Does that make sense?
Oh, it 100%. It 100%. Who was the one that you looked to for those traits of a father? Because it sounds like you're looking and you're seeing a lot of the traits that aren't father-like.
Yeah.
In order to build that picture.
Both of my grandfathers, my paternal grandfather and my maternal grandfather, and I had several uncles who modeled fatherhood in their own families. And our family, especially on my mother's side, was close enough where all the cousins got together all the time. So you were always over Uncle Junior's house or Uncle Lauren or somewhere. You know what I mean? And so you saw what manhood looked like. You saw what fatherhood looked like, and you took those things. And like I said before, when I got married, it's not like I had it all together. And in fact, I became a father at 17 years old. And when I married my daughter, we got custody of my daughter, who was 11 at the time. And not to say that I did everything right, but I tried to pull from those examples that I had from my grandfathers as well as from my uncles. And it was kind of like patchwork.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think anyone actually has a full picture of what they're looking at, because every child is different.
Yeah. Every child is different. And my wife and I had two daughters of our own. And so my oldest daughter was instant babysitter at 14 and then again at 16, But yeah, so there's the fatherhood element of my life. And then the music element came very, very before I could, it's just like, hey, I was born black, I'm born a musician, I'm born a man. It was just all wrangled up there. And my grandfather was able to see that talent in me and bought me my first drum set. And, I've been playing in bands since fifth grade, um, playing with brothers who, are still brothers today. And, learning early on, I had this insatiable appetite for the music business. I always knew that there was something behind just going on stage and playing music. So the eighth grade, I went to the school library, and there was a book by Kenny Rogers and Lynn Eppin, and it was called Making It in Music, right? And so I began to like traverse this book, man, and learned about copyright and publishing and production and all of this. Is eighth grade, and ninth grade, and so we're doing variety shows, what we used to call variety shows, which other people call high school dances and whatnot. And so we're traveling around town, and I can remember my the bass player at the time saying, "Man, you need to put that book down, and you need to pick up those drumsticks." Like I was more about what was going on behind the structure and in the industry of music than I was actually the performance. Like my passion was more on the back end of making sure that that happened. And now that same dude, Chris Rhodes, is saying, "I wish I would have picked up that book."
Why didn't you share?
Right. Well, I'm riding around with it. This is that became, in a sense, my Bible. Making It with Music. This is just the best music book at that time. And then this business of music, I just absorbed all of that. Donald Passman's book. I'm now even today, I just started reading Ari Hurston's his music book, which is in his third edition. So I think that for musicians and becoming entrepreneurial musicians, Smash, the EntreMusician, coming about was a result of me really wanting to know the nuts and bolts of the industry and what needs to happen.
And I think in understanding the background and the behind the scenes, I think a lot of musicians have suffered in that because they don't understand everything in the business world, and so they have a high level of trust that they thrust upon somebody, hoping that that trust won't be broken.
True, or there's apathy, and I'm saying this as sensitively as possible, but there's also ignorance because we're so tied to our instrument, to our gift, and to our talent that we just want to play. That's pretty much at the forefront. I'm a piano player, I'm a guitarist, I'm a saxophonist, and pretty much everything else that has to happen, we'll figure it out, but I need to just get up there and play. And so, there has to be that balance of, okay, answering the questions of why, knowing who your audience is, and I hope we're not getting ahead of ourselves, we're ahead of your questions, but knowing who your target audience is, knowing what marketing is, knowing how to protect your intellectual property, bringing those safeguards which help to build your career is vital and potent. And that's a passion of mine.
Oh, and you can tell it's passion because of the way when you say it and you express it, it comes across your words and your face.
Oh,
it very much. You can see
my face, so
I do want to touch on something though. You talked about you started to gain relationship again with your father, and a lot of that has come through the power of forgiveness. What does genuine forgiveness look like in that relationship?
Well, the way it happened was the Lord had me out shoveling snow. I was shoveling snow. This had to be, 15 years ago. I'm shoveling snow, and Youngstown gets a lot of snow, Ohio. So the Lord asked me a question. How old was your mom and dad when they got married? So they were 20, 21. And so he shows me a picture of me at 20, 21. I was an absolute wreck. Right? So he asked me, he says, so how can you hold this over your dad when he was 21? Look at where you were. How could you, you know, and it's a question that I couldn't answer because he forgave me of so much. And all of the things that I've done in my life, which I should not. And I guess you hear people in their testimonies say either I would have been dead or in jail. Well, Jerry, that's absolutely right. In fact, I did go to jail. Okay, and I should have stayed longer, but His grace and His mercy, they should have had my funeral already. The choices that I had made from that year 16 to 28, those 13 years, and he began to impress upon me the things that he had forgiven me for, the things I had asked him. And Jesus even had a parable about that, where the master forgave the servant and he sent the servant away, and the servant went out and found someone who owed him like 13 cents. And he wanted, he's reminding me of these things. Money. Where's my 13 cents? And it's amazing. So, that's when I began making the steps to call my dad, because we were at an impasse, and to call him and begin to talk about the weather, because you don't know what to talk about. Yeah, it sure is nice outside. How's everybody doing? That type of thing, those 13-second conversations, which would grow over time at that. And again, my stepfather being deceased at that point, of really in my heart beginning to value some of the things that I had earlier cursed about him. And to say, well, what was he trying to do? What was the motivation? What was his upbringing like that he would express himself in some of the ways that he did? And trying to gain some understanding from that. And so in trying to do that, really, and that's why I said that's one of the threads. I don't know why I started there with my fatherless situation, but one of the threads of just me knowing who I am was wrangling with the fact that these were two men who had their own experiences. And if I try to at least build a bridge of understanding, then that's going to help me understand myself. Why do I have the work ethic that I do? Because my stepfather made me get up and do things, which his method of doing it may have been wrong, but it made a man out of me.
Yeah, the impact was nonetheless.
Exactly. And when you talk about resiliency, I get those traits because I grew up in an environment where this is what's happening. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. This is what you need to do to respond. That helped.
It's really interesting because you said, when you were talking about the parable that Jesus told, you said, the man owed him 13 cents.
Right.
And then you mentioned your father. The conversation started out 13 seconds. Yeah. That's a huge connection right there, because think about the forgiveness that had to come even to that person. And now here you are having 13-second conversations turning into what forgiveness looks like. And it looks like forgiveness looks like a reflection in the mirror.
It does. It really does. It really does.
There's a lot to speak on that, right? Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
just that's going to give me, I'm going to have a lot of deep conversations with myself now in thinking about that.
Yeah. And I've had a few of them. I'm sure there's more to go, but I've had a few of them because, again, for me, you take this situation and check it out, because, it was my mom growing up. So my stepfather, although they were married, they separated later in their relationship. So it's my mom and my two sisters. So I get married and it's my wife and my three daughters, right? So I've got this somewhat masculine isolation where I have to talk to myself more, and I have to ask myself the tough questions, because I have to be the protector, I have to be the provider, I have to be the one who is really providing emotional shelter. And so what do you have to draw on? Wow, well, what I have to draw on is broken relationships, because I don't have that, that connection where I can just call and say, hey, Dad, what about this? Because I'm still dealing with the fact that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So yes, I'm looking in the mirror and going, okay, so what do you do? What do you learn? How do you piece together, what you don't know. And that's where the Father comes into place, because that's the other leg in the story, is like, I can honor God, I can respect God, but calling him Father was really a learning curve for me, because that brings sadness to me. That brings emptiness. That doesn't have the same connotation as it may have for others, other Christians, other people of faith. But to be able to know him as my Father, and that he is my protector, and he is my provider, and he is the one that's providing for me emotionally and spiritually and otherwise, that's a game changer too, because he is the one that was holding up the mirror.
Yeah, 100.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. 100. I mean, 100%, Jerry. It's those missing concepts of life that are hard to see in someone that's supposed to be above us like that. So for you to say, Father, today is and to try to have that conversation, sometimes that's the only person that you have to lean on. But then to go, Jehovah Jireh, my provider, right? Did you have any sisters growing up?
Oh yeah, my two sisters.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I had steps and halves, but my two sisters in the home with me.
And now and then you have 3 daughters of your own, and so I think that was kind of a preparation for you to be able to see how to handle the female side.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what happens and how things are kind of provided in such a way to pave what that path is going to look like later on in life.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely, because then I had to learn again, if he's Abba Father, because that's where it came from, God to my Father, and trying to learn that to Romans 8 to Abba Father, which there isn't an intimate connection there. So he's showing me how to be a father to my girls, but then he's also showing me how to be a son to him.
Oh, yes, I do. And man, Jerry, you're hitting me from the left, you're hitting me from the right, you're hitting me right down the center, and it's amazing because I knew this conversation was going to be good. But brother, the depth that you go to be able to tell that story, and just to see where you are now from where you could have possibly been, huge dividends between. And so your leadership journey, even just coming into now More Than a Mastermind with Brandon David and Claudia 1 Million and all, and this whole group, you come from a really unique perspective.
Yeah.
So you're coming out of 27 years in ministry to now you're doing EntreMusician, which we will transition and start to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
But what has your leadership perspective been going from serving a church community to serving a new community with EntreMusician?
The last 4 weeks has been pretty ironic that it seems to be one and the same. In the same approach that you take to pastor the Lord's people. In the EntreMusician, there's many different people from many different walks of life and perspective. And, I was called, one young lady from New York called me her pastor, not knowing that I'd just come out of I don't wear pastor as a banner or position. And I eschew, let me just say this sensitively too, and seem to draw back from those who do wear the titles, and there's 150 positions before you get to Ralph Johnson. You know what I mean? And so I'm trying to be sensitive here, but I eschew them because I know where the Lord found me. I know where he found me. And so for this particular person to say that and not know that means, God, you're just not wiping your anointing off. We're going into a whole nother chapter, and obviously you want me to serve in the same capacity. So if I have to serve and pastor, and I say that sensitively as well, not lord over but serve these musicians who need help and guidance. Not because they're not talented or gifted. Some of them are extraordinarily gifted, but in the things that they need, like that backdrop of copyright, publishing, distribution, marketing, promotion, and the things that they need to put in place, then that's what I'll do. I'll serve them in that capacity. The other thing that he kind of honed in on me was the age group. So we began to exclude, it's not a situation where it's any musician of any age. It's primarily those who are 50 and over, because that's two unique situations that most of us in this age group have. First of all, do I still have it? Secondly, the music industry is really focused in on the youth, focused in on the young. And so, maybe my window has passed. And so I'll settle when the Lord is really going, no, hey, no, you still have a message. I still gave you that gift so that you can use it for my glory, and you can make the world a better place because of what I've downloaded into you.
You bring up a very brilliant point here where the music industry has a tendency of focusing and zeroing in on their largest demographic that's going to remain with them for an extended period of time. But yet I'm over here going, I listen to John Coltrane all the time. Like, I've got all the blue records downstairs by my record player. I listen to the Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. I listen to these types of groups that are continuing, even though, like John Coltrane, obviously not producing any more music, but yet his music lives on because of the legacy behind the words that are there. So I think that we lose a lot of that demographic and that train of thought by thinking that just because you're older, you can't produce words that mean something.
That's right. Or you're no longer relevant.
Yeah.
And there's an audience. There's a vast audience for new music that comes out from people who are over the age of 40. And again, going back to the music industry, the outlets, the radio stations, sometimes a lot of the podcast or online radio, doesn't really focus on it. College is very big, but that's a certain demographic right there. But you have something, and if you're listening or watching or however you're getting this podcast episode, and you just happen to be over the age of 49, and you're a musician, don't keep that guitar in the case, in the closet somewhere, or in the basement. Pick that thing back up. And the music that you had put on your cassette, or, that was on an 8-track, or you and your band did this 30 years ago, let's get back to it, because there's a wide market that's out there and ready to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I used to say the same thing about my dad's trumpet and his French horn, because they were collecting dust for the longest time. And I think he was probably in his late 30s, mid 40s when he picked it up and actually started playing it again at church. And it had been, 20 years since he'd played the trumpet, but he went ahead and picked it up. So he used to play with Phil Driscoll back in high school. They were at high school together. And I was like, Dad, if Phil can still play, I mean, you still got chops. Come on, Dad. And it's been a good journey for him to continue, because music, heals the soul. There's a lot of places and a lot of work, especially like, with the type of musicians that you work with, they still got something left in the tank.
Absolutely.
And they just need somebody to tell them that.
That's absolutely right. And motivate them and stand with them and help them to navigate and understand. Like, that's one of the reasons I'm grateful to be in our More Than a Mastermind, because of what I'm learning from about Web3 and NFTs and whatnot, and able to say, hey, we need to figure this out. We need to be on the front end, and don't be afraid. Most may still be afraid of posting regularly on TikTok or, the social platforms that we have in Web 2, but to take it a step further and say that, look, you can do this. You can mint your first NFT and make it happen and be at the cutting edge of what's going on it invigorates you a little bit. Can I say this one other thing specifically about music? Because, my heart has always been, even when I was at my worst, Nathan, I'm talking about that Jerry, right? Music was always very, very sacred to me. And by God's grace, I always had some sort of recording studio that I was working out of, either a home studio or a standalone building. And I can remember, this is mid 90s, when rap had taken a turn. I mean, rap used to, it started out happy and, partying, and it was the celebrating of the party. And then we took a turn. And, I was trying to make music in my little studio, and rappers would come in and whatnot, and they would pay me for the studio time. But when they started with the cut, and I cussed at the time. I got high at the time. But when they started with that, I was like, whoa, that shouldn't be on, because music is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Music is sacred. And so that was an interesting and ironic dichotomy for me, because I no longer want your money. I don't want to do this. I don't want to participate at this realm. And so, again, going back to the 50 plus age, is that we know chord progression. We know that music matters more. There's a sacredness to it than just putting a beat together and cussing over it and talking about the most perverse situations possible. Because even in music that we grew up listening to, if it was talking about love making, it would be nuanced in a way where you knew what was being said, but it wasn't so graphic.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? When you think about the Song of Solomon is very sensual. Come on.
Absolutely.
With it. And you can put that to music, but you understand that it has to be framed in a certain way where there's still dignity and respect and decorum. And for some reason, we've let our guard down, and the elders have to come back to the fore and restore righteousness to music. We have to do it. It's a mission. Let's make it happen.
And it is a mission with a message that is of passion. And, and I think you're right there, where there's that, yes, the elders know chord progression, but they understand how the balance of the note and the words have to be blended in such a way to create a story to fit that classic form.
Absolutely. You listen to a Sarah Vaughan record, and you hear her extension of a note as the French horn is pulling in or as the saxophone is coming along underneath, and you understand the synergy. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't want to sound like an old man to say, well, we have to get back to that. But there are elements about that you have to honor and say, wow. You talked about Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. I mean, totally different genre, excellent musicians. And you hear how they can weave the banjo into a slap bass.
Oh, yeah.
While Future Man is on, I mean, there's this rhythm that he put together right underneath them. And then, yeah, if you hear Bela Fleck with Chick Corea, what? Banjo and classical piano. Stop it. I'm just talking about honor and sacredness. And it doesn't matter the instrumentation, but the interplay. And, for some reason, we've lost that. Now, there are people in this modern stream, again, I don't want to sound like the senior guy here with the pipe and the gray hair. Although I can't hide that. But the thing about it, there are some younger producers out here who are bringing that honor. So I'm not slicing everything. But for the most part, the thing or the music that is most popular or gets piped into us that this is the newest, greatest thing is often actually the worst. That there's far more landscape of great music out here that we should be exposed to and are not. That's all I'm trying to say.
Oh, no. And I think like the John Legends, right? Like John Legend has a way of telling that story without pushing the boundaries. It's a very classic way of doing so.
But interestingly, John Legend is not 22 anymore.
Yeah.
So he, I mean, he has some life experience that he's pulled back, I'm sure, and said, well, this is the landscape here. Life has a way of doing
Yeah. But so now, what are you doing now with EntreMusician? We've kind of beat around it a little bit, but give us the business picture.
So at the forefront, the EntreMusician is a community. Okay, it's a community of like-minded men and women who are over the age of 50, who have either done some magnificent things and are coming back to help restructure and guide their peers, or they are still very much actively involved. For example, we have a gentleman, Vance Anderson, who we call Uncle Vance. Now, Vance was the tour manager for the great, iconic Tony Bennett for 20 years. He also toured with Pat Metheny and John McLaughlin, he knows the music industry inside and out. And he is 74 now. He wouldn't mind me telling you his age. And he is one of those core men in the community that teach artist management and teach others what it means to actually know how to put a tour together. Because we want you touring in your 50s and your 60s and your 70s, because many people are. Gladys Knight is still touring, Patti LaBelle is still touring, and they're in their late 60s and early 70s, right? We have Linda Bolero, who is the associate professor of voice at Berklee College of Music. And so she's teaching, how to warm up your vocals, how to, breathe now. Life happens, there's changes in your body and your chemistry, and she's helping to teach that flow of what happens. And she's also a great artist manager as well. As a matter of fact, a young man who's under the age of 50, but his name is Oviante Magsby from Memphis, Tennessee. Brilliant piano player. He is not sighted like Stevie Wonder or Ray Charles, just brilliant, and she is helping his career along. And so we have different people like that. I could go on and on, but I just want you to know that there are pillars in this community to help us in our quest to encourage musicians. So the second thing is, so it's a community. We have a mastermind that meets on Sunday, and then we have podcasts, which we have episodes, which I'm one of the hosts, but I have co-hosts who do their own episodes as well. And we talk about everything. I'm talking about everything from spiritual dynamics to how to set your microphone up properly. Just everything across the board. And as a matter of fact, one of my favorite podcast episodes is one that I did myself about 3 years ago. It's called 7 Mistakes I Made as a Band Leader. I think everyone should start with that one, because if you eschew those 7 mistakes I made, you're probably going to be successful. But that one right there is what to do and what not to do as you're rebooting or relaunching your career. So anything that you can imagine that has to do with the music industry or you as the musician, that's what we discuss and talk about on the podcast. And thirdly, with respect to the website at EntreMusician.com, we've built community there, but we've also provided some real resources that you can just go as a one-stop and find out about copywriting your song or distribution, or find out about beginning your own podcast, because this is not, again, us lording over you. You come to us and you eat. No, we want to help empower you for what you desire to do and how to do these things for yourself. It's the teach a man how to fish, concept, rather than just giving them fish to eat.
Oh, and you have literally written the book on this and taken your thoughts and put it in. Oh, don't say you tried. You wrote the book, brother.
I've tried to do it. But these are again, look, I'm not an author. These are things, again, that was definitely Holy Spirit inspired, because our 3 legs that we stand on is mindset, discipline, and focus. And so underneath the 9 mindset, discipline, and focus, what I needed to do, Nathan, was to say, do I really believe this? This is what I'm talking. This is what some of the podcasts, but what's underneath the hood of these 3 things? And I discovered 9 keys which unlock mindset, discipline, and focus. And so it's a very little book. I'm not such a deep thinker that it's like 700 pages. This can fit in your gig bag or your guitar case or whatever, and you can take it with you. And just last week, the audiobook became available on Audible and iTunes, and we're grateful, for that. But it's just core things that you need, and you can figure it out on your own. You're 50, you're 60, you're 70. They come to you, but if you can just start here and go, yeah, that's right. I agree with that.
It almost sounds like it's a building block where I'm going to give you the 9, but I need you to build on top of it because it is a personalized journey.
It's your career.
Absolutely.
It's your career. We have a course. We're in the middle of a 3-month intensive. We started June 4th. It'll be over March 29th. And the students who have signed on to it, it's amazing because you think, wow, I should have known this. And it's like, wow, it's a whole new world just to discover what's happening. And again, Brandon is going to be one of the guest coaches that comes on, and he's going to talk about Web3 and whatnot to them as we progress through, by the time this airs, it would have already happened. So,
well, but this is amazing because out of this mastermind, there has been so many links and connections to people because that's exactly what was intended by this. It was just to bring the community together and say, listen, you're smart about this. So here you go, you take that. But theentremusician.com is kind of that one-stop shop. We can get the book as well through any of your outlets. Yeah. And then you also, which I didn't know until today, had CDs available as well.
Absolutely, but the CDs are available at SounDoctrine.com. One word, one D. Okay, if you go to the one word with 2 Ds, there's an interesting preacher on there. But anyway, SounDoctrine.com, one word, one D, and we put this band together in 2001. The first CD came out in 2002, and it's original alternative funk jazz fusion. That's the genre. And because we come from so many different places musically, we just threw it all in a pot and turned up the heat. And so that's the type of music that comes out as steam. But you want to check out SounDoctrine. Every album is different. There's instrumental albums. There are albums where we fuse, vocals and whatnot in it. There's a lot of different songwriters that come to fore. So it's a lot of great flavor, man. I'm very, very grateful for what SounDoctrine has been able to do. We haven't recorded since 2020 when they closed down everything, but we're looking to reboot. So music is going to be coming out this year.
Well, we will have every single link that is needed in order to find, as well as the book title with a direct link to the Amazon site or wherever the best one is that you have, Jere B, for that. We'll have all of those links in the description below. I am so excited that we actually did this today because just the conversation, finding out a little bit more about who you are and how you operate has made this journey with More Than a Mastermind even better. If anyone is actually interested, I'll put a link to how to sign up for the More Than a Mastermind in the description as well, because I think that there's a lot of value with the connections that come out of this, but more so the investment that each member makes in everyone else. Jere, final thing, book recommendation. Do you have a book recommendation for us outside of your own book? You can't pick it.
Yeah, that's it. No, I have one right down here, as a matter of fact, and this is Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. Have you ever read this?
I have not.
You should read this. Oh my goodness gracious! When you talk about leadership and you talk about some of the things that can, if you have tunnel vision as a leader, this will open up your periphery. And I think this was written before Simon Sinek's Start With Why. But there's a lot of why questions in here that you have to ask yourself. And there's a lot of scenarios. And the way they've done it, they've done a masterful job because it's like you're reading a novel. It's not like do this, don't do that. It's like you're reading a novel and you're walking through this person's life. And it just immediately connects with your own because in leadership, as I've had to, pastor, as I've gone through the EntreMusician, it's like, wow, there was I've deceived myself in a lot of different things. And I meant well in doing it, but uncovering the motivation. You got to uncover the motivation every time. Did you do it to protect yourself? Did you do it to protect the other person when really they shouldn't have been protected in that moment? This is us being transformative with each other because I'm here to serve you and to help you. And it just uncovers all kinds of different layers that how we can be self-deceived. So,
wow.
Great.
Leadership, self-deception. Oh, I'm looking forward to the read.
Leadership and self-deception.
I'm looking forward
Absolutely.
to it.
It's a great book.
So we've got the website, we've got the CDs, we've got the podcast, and we've got the book. Jere B, everyone. Thank you, Jere. Any final words that you have for the listeners today?
If you are a musician, first and foremost, and you happen to be over the age of 50, come look us up, come help us create community. I know that there's someone out there who thinks that the time has passed. Do I have 30 seconds for one little tidbit? Because I went to a funeral once from a young man who was in the studio. His dad had passed away and he was doing vocals. So me and the engineer, just out of respect for this young man, went to the calling hours actually. And there was music that was being played there, and I couldn't place it. It was great music. As we're in the receiving line going to greet the family, I had to ask this young man, I said, man, what you guys listening to? He said, it was my father's music. He never thought that it was good enough. And he never released it. It was just something he did like on the weekends. And man, the sadness that hit me, I didn't know this gentleman. Obviously, I'm just coming out of respect. And it's like, man, that would never be my story. You know, the music that God gave us is meant to be shared. So if you're out there, look, let's go. I'm telling you, it's time. It's time. It's time. And so that's my heart to you. And I'm not just trying to sell anything to you. I'm saying, let's go. Get your music out of the basement and onto the world.
In the words of Brandon David, let's go. Hey,
let's go.
Today's episode is only possible thanks to my friend and producer, G. Frazier with 369sounddesign.com. He is truly the hardest working man in the industry because he has the job of making me and Jere B sound amazing. We are blessed by the entire team here at the Wartime Leadership Podcast. See you next time. Be blessed.